This is the Women Emerging Expedition podcast, so you can follow the ups and downs and the roundabouts of the expedition and play your part in them. 24 women started on the 28th of May 2022 on this virtual expedition that will take 9 months. We are women from across the world determined to find an approach to leadership that resonates with women. We'll be successful so that women the world over will be able to say, if that's leadership, I'm in. Welcome to this 40th episode of the Expedition podcast. My name is Julia Middleton. I am the proud leader of this expedition. A few months ago, we decided as a group, all of us on the expedition, that we needed to define the word leadership. Not an easy task. We looked and couldn't find one that worked for all of us. But in the end, we created one ourselves that resonates with us all. Why did we do it? Because I think we needed a starting point. And because we wanted to reinforce the point that leadership is leadership is leadership. It's not gendered. Leadership, men and women, whatever, the definition is not gendered. What we propose is that how you deliver the leadership that may be quite gendered and may possibly be very different if you're a woman. But leadership itself is not gendered. So our definition is as follows. Leadership is catalyzing people's talent, ideas and actions with purpose and momentum to reach goals and realize a shared vision. Now, this episode is going to attempt something a bit unusual, which is to go to 11 members of the expedition and ask them to translate this definition into their first language. I loved doing this episode. It has been immensely revealing and has had a very, really profound impact on me. It's put for me to words and illustrated an instinct that I've had for a long time, I think, but I've always failed to express it rightly. And certainly not just express it, but take it to a deeper level. One of the few criteria for being chosen to be one of the women on the expedition is that you had to speak more than one language. Now, I was always really, really clear that was needed and sometimes struggled to explain exactly why. The obvious reason, obviously, is that it means that we can communicate the outcomes of the expedition, the approach to leadership that resonates with women, into multiple languages. I also deeply believe that if you speak more than one language, your brain is just wired in a slightly different way, and that different wiring would enrich the expedition. But if you listen to this episode with 11 different translations of our definition, I think it begins to make you realise just how much English both empowers people and deeply disempowers people. All the members have been involved in this, but it's been very much the germ of this particular idea and this episode came from 2 members, Hinemoa and Annalouche. Thank you so much to both of you. Let me hand over to Hinemoa first to explain what we're going to do just a little bit more.
Okay, so kia ora Julia, kia ora everybody. I've been working as part of the Cultural and Linguistic Diversity Group, really exploring how we're grappling with the tyranny of English, you might say. It's on one hand, it's the common shared global language of our expedition and of much of our lives. It's the language of our political lives, the media, business, academia, and the law. And of course, it has a historical context of oppression and colonization, which is ongoing here and in many other parts of the world. And it's been deliberately used to extinguish other languages. And of course, there is some literature recognizing that there is linguistic racism and sexism within English too. So we felt that without focusing on the cultural and linguistic diversity of our group and our global aims, in terms of the English language that we're using to communicate, we could miss out on some other really fruitful discussions and perhaps some quite challenging ones around how we express ourselves in the context of this working definition that has been developed.
Thank you, Hinemoa. So there are 11 members of the expedition who have taken on this translation task. Therefore, we have translations in Mandarin, Creole, Russian, Maori, Baha'i, Greek, Spanish, Polish, French, Arabic, and Bengali. Sit back and enjoy. So, our first person is Erica, and she is going to translate our definition into Mandarin. And she'll explain why she feels she's only got 80% there so far.
I was trying to take a two-step exercise. First step is getting the keywords and content into Chinese. That's one Mandarin. But secondly, also trying to go one step further is if there's like a Chinese old saying. I think I'm probably 80% there. But the last part I want to try to take one step further is if I can find a Chinese old poem or old saying to representing the meaning behind that. So that's I'm still searching, and I think I need a bit more time, and also the challenge is I may find a good one, I may not. So this is just purely luck.
So if you just translated it at the moment rather than in the future, what do you have any sense of what it would sound like?
本着同一目标和良好势头.
So, Erica, we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you right at the end of this episode, because by then you will have found it.
I'm still having a high hope that I will get it. I will find it someday.
My money is on Erica. She will find it. Next, we're over to Isata in Creole. She starts her definition, and I emphasize the word her definition here. You'll see what I mean.
They help and encourage people there for use then sabi and put them into action for let all man better. You know, and I ended up falling in love with the word in Creole, ep, because when I speak Creole, I usually say help, you know, as in English, but ep, help in Creole is ep. I wanted to use that word in a sentence.
Ep.
Ep.
Ep. So leadership. There's a lot of you in this translation. Did I hear the word man in there?
All man, yes. So all man means everybody. Yes. So this is where you have this, you know, man used as people as opposed to, all man means everybody. For make all man better. So everybody's lives are improved, basically, you know. Yeah. So sabi. You didn't catch that one. That's another one I like. There are two words in Creole for know, to know. Pretty much the same as in French, right? To know somebody and to know in terms of knowledge is two different words. Yes. The double sabi is a personal knowledge, which is talent. So your inherent kind of knowledge or personal. Yeah, so sabi in this case is the talent. That's what it translates into.
Thank you, Isata. Next is Katya, who jumps straight into Russian.
Целенаправленно и динамично стимулировать человеческие способности, идеи и действия для решения задач и воплощения общего видения. So Russian is a gendered language. So usually if you're talking about something, you have to choose a gender. But I think here, the fact that the word, so человеческие способности is kind of, it's like human capabilities. So the fact that it's not like a man's capabilities or a woman's capabilities. In that case, if we had talked about the individual, then I think we would have come to the gender problem of having to put either or in the definition. But because it's plural, it's kind of easier to bypass that in my definition. But so in Russian, I actually chose not to translate it as reach goals, but instead solve problems, because the way that it sounds in Russian, it's kind of like you have one particular goal maybe that you want to get to, whereas solving problems, it's kind of a process. So you're reaching. So it's this solving tasks that I liked, like the way that sounds, as opposed to reaching goals, because I think what we discussed as well, that leadership is also about the process and how you include people in that process. So that's why I chose решение задач, so like the solving of tasks. Tasks is not, it sounds better in Russian.
Katya, it does sound wonderful in Russian. Let's move on and actually move back to Hinemoa, translating our definition of leadership into Māori. She tried two different approaches, two very different approaches, and in so doing introduce us to the concept of the agent emphatic.
So one approach is to do a relatively literal translation. And as I started to do that, I realized, we have some different grammatical ways to approach things. So we have a grammatical approach that we call the agent emphatic. And what that means is that it's important to us to know who is doing the thing that is being done. We also like to use personification. So the way I started my first translation is mā aronga, mā torohaki, o te whāko ki, o te ope, hei tahu ngā pukenga, ngā whakaaro, me ngā mahinga, ka whai te whakatinanatanga o te wawata ngā tahi. So what that shows is that mā aronga, I've personified the word, the verb purpose, or the noun purpose actually. I've personified that and made it a capital. So by aronga, as if aronga, purpose, is an actor, is a person, and by torohaki, momentum, again personified, of the catalyst. So you can also see already that I've positioned those aspects. The purpose and momentum come first, of the catalyst, the activity of the group. So it's the group that is being catalytic. It's not an individual, which I think is inherent in the English. Using a sort of a theme around the catalytic energy, hei tahu, which ignites the skills and the ideas, ngā pukenga me ngā whakaaro, and me ngā mahinga, and the actions, ka whai, which to reach, in order to reach, te whakatinanatanga, which is this realization idea, to become real, to turn it into a body. The word tinana means the body. So to become embodied, to be realized of the unified ngātahi, the wawata, which is ngātahi. So we put our adjectives after the noun, as many other languages do. So that was my first sort of relatively literal approach. And then I must say, I thought that might really not. And so I also reflected on some of the proverbial sayings, the whakatauki and whakatauaki that we have in our language. And so one, again, you see the agent emphatic here, which I think also exemplifies what we're trying to say, goes like this. Mā te ihu one one, o te ihu hupe ka ihu mania. And what that translates to is unyielding perseverance is the catalyst for success. But literally, it's actually the nose in the dirt, the hard work of the nose with the mucus, that's the young or the novice, becomes the clever nose, becomes the successful person. So clearly the nose was a very important metaphor for people in our culture in times gone by.
Thank you so much, Hinemoa. Now, Hinemoa's certainty almost matches Selvie's uncertainty. And the truth is, as Selvie and I talked, we become even less and less certain as we went, as Selvie attempted to translate our definition of leadership into Baha'i.
What I'm trying to figure out is what does actually catalyze mean, even in English word, and try to figure it out. And therefore, from then, I can come up with a more simpler or more localized kind of language. And vision. So vision in Bahasa, I have it as visi, which is a real Indonesian word, but it is very complex in a way, complex in a way, even in English. What do you mean by vision?
Why would you simplify it?
Because it is very foreign. But who use it other than corporate? I have a lot of words for people, like
Tell me
orang,
some of the words for people.
Orang.
Mm-hmm.
So orang-orang. So orang means man. Orang-orang is the repetition, which means people. So orang.
So not a word for people that has both men and women in it.
So orang-orang is both are gender neutral. Even like we don't have he or she. It's just gender neutral. Interesting. First round of translating here, I will say kepemimpinan berarti mengkatalisis masyarakat punya talenta, idea, dan aksi dengan tujuan dan momentum untuk mencapai cita-cita dan membuat menjadi nyata sebuah visi yang kita miliki bersama.
This was translating rather than speaking your own language.
Yes, direct translation.
And therefore it doesn't really mean much.
Yes, so the whole thing just sounds off.
So Selvie, how are we going to solve this problem?
Lose the big words.
With the words, lose the big words in my head. And thank you for them, Selvie. I now move on to Maria. Now, Maria is not a member of the expedition. She is the expedition community manager based in Greece and much loved by all of us. It's, apart from the fact that Maria is here because we love her, the other reason is because almost the wickedest word in this definition, and in some ways the most powerful as well, is the word catalyse. And of course, that is a Greek word. So here Maria starts with her definition in Greek.
Καταλύοντας τα ταλέντα, ιδέες και δράσεις των ανθρώπων με σκοπό και ορμή για την επίτευξη ενός στόχου και την πραγματοποίηση ενός κοινού οράματος. So, one of the words is καταλύω, and this is the catalyzing people's talents and ideas and actions. Catalyzing in Greek, it has it's a double meaning word. It can be used with a negative sense, and it means that, back in the ancient Greek moments, it was like, for instance, when you had democracy somewhere and somebody was able to go and remove democracy and put another person there. However, catalyzing is also used in chemistry. And in chemistry, it has exactly the same meaning as it has in English.
So you have a word that in some context is used as a spark, and in another context is used as a killer, a stopper.
Yeah. When this word is alone, you can play with it and you can take it in every way that you want. But when this word is surrounded by other words, then it can also always change the meaning.
Okay, go on.
The second word, which is actually very interesting, and as I said, is the word momentum. Now, the momentum is coming from the Latin. In English, momentum, it has a very special meaning. And like I said, surrounding this, it can bring very, something which is very powerful in this sentence. In Greek, it means ormi, momentum. Now, ormi, like I said, it can show that I am jumping towards something. It's coming with force. I'm coming with force. It takes everything with it.
Maria, thank you for taking us back to the Greek origins and the Roman origins. Little did we know that by going back to the Greek origins of catalyst, we would end up with two competing definitions. Thank you. Now we're on to Anna Luz, and she approaches the word catalytic in a very, very simple way as a scientist and has complete clarity on what it means. But she starts first with a translation into Spanish.
Liderar or liderazgo, which is to lead or leadership, es catalizar el talento, las ideas y las acciones de la gente con intención e ímpetu para alcanzar metas y realizar una visión compartida. As many of you may know by now, I have a scientific background. I'm a scientist. What's interesting is that catalyzing, enzymes catalyze chemical reactions, for example, and when they do that, they do multiple things. They bring things together that normally wouldn't have come together or might have taken much longer to get together. They accelerate their interaction and their transformation into something new, sometimes on the scale of millions of years. Think about that. Reactions that would take millions of years take seconds when you have an enzyme or another component there to catalyze it. And finally, we've been talking about activation energy, which I think is such an interesting idea. So for a chemical reaction to happen, you need initial activation energy. And when you catalyze, you reduce that original hurdle of the activation energy that you need to make things happen. And I think all of that is a beautiful metaphor, really, for what we're trying to say here about the role of a leader. Let me tell you about the rest of the definition. So the first thing I snagged on was people's talent, ideas, and actions. Because in Spanish, you can't just, I had to make a choice. Do I say el talento, las ideas y las acciones de otros, of others? Do I say de la gente, which is what I went with, which is a more literal people's? But I will say that that quick moment of thinking made me realize that we really mean of people inclusive of the leader, I think, in this definition, right? And that's important, I think, because if I had said las acciones de otros, I would have excluded the leader. And then finally, momentum, again, given my science background, I would have been fine leaving it as it was. It's a Latin word. But in order to make this more accessible, I really wanted to find a Spanish word, and I went with ímpetu. So, catalizar el talento, las ideas y las acciones de la gente con intención e ímpetu. It's that forward motion push, which is interesting too, because unlike momentum kind of assumes you keep going. You had a forward motion and you're going to keep it going. Impetu might mean you're the one pushing, you're the one starting. I like it. Impetu. And it starts with an accent, which honestly gives it an extra oomph.
Impetu.
Eso. Exactly.
Thank you, Anna Luz. Now another Anna in Polish.
Korelacja ludzkich talentów, idei i działań z intencją i motywacją, aby osiągnąć cel i zrealizować wspólną wizję. The aspect of language, different languages, is very interesting for me, especially because I used to study philology, which is the knowledge about the language, and also I studied music, which is also another language. And as a poet as well, I know that there's a joke that either the translation has to be faithful or beautiful. And here we have the same situation, that some of the words that I was trying to translate directly doesn't fit at all. When I was translating, I had problem with some of the words, for example, catalyzing, because in Polish it's catalyzowanie, which is totally like from for the chemical science, and it's very scientific. And it was really like something that just I was thinking I'm very limited. I'm kind of like paralyzed with this kind of laboratory definition. In Polish, when I saw that exact definition of the word catalyzing, it means it refers only to the speed, so making something move faster or slower. So it didn't really resonate with me. So I searched for the word, and I found a word which I would never use in English definition, which is correlation. And korelacja, I found the best solution for my language. And then I was the people's talent and ideas. That's another thing, because idea, when I would translate it directly into Polish, it's like a sparkle. It's like a bit. I have an idea, but it wasn't the purpose with this word in this. It was like a space of creativity, more like a space, not like a sparkle, but like a space of creativity. And that would represent pomysł is like this, like sparkle, but here is more like idea. And idea is more like a creative space. But if I would Google it, Google Translate Direct, it would give me the not a good word.
We move on to Fatima, who will translate into French. She, just as Anna abandoned the word catalyzing, Fatima ended up coming round to it, not without first pointing out that she was occasionally tired of all the impossible things I ask her to do.
Always with you, Julia, because we have to think out of the box, so it's not common. Because catalyzing for me, it's a view. It's not in French a common word. I don't use this word catalyzing because in French catalyzing is catalyseur, so it's the same word in French. And catalyseur, and it's like a synonym of to empower, to give more strength, to give more power for leadership. So yes, it's
a word with potential, isn't it?
Yeah, and I asked myself, when we use catalyzing, it's for energy, to give more energy. Catalyzing is something to amplify. So something, yes. If you see this image, catalyzing is like it's like a comet, like a star. You know,
your arms are going bang outward.
Yes. Right. So if I translate the French, catalyser les personnes, les talents, les idées, les actions avec l'objectif et oui, le momentum, because it's a Latin word, pour atteindre un objectif et réaliser une vision partagée. Wow!
Well, how do you translate purpose?
Objectif.
Objectif is a small, more, but objectif, isn't that quite a small word compared to a purpose, which is an objectif is a sort of a target. A purpose is something that lifts you up.
But I understand when you say that purpose is more noble, more something very high, very
Lifting.
greatness, related with the vision. But for nous, c'est, yes, maybe we can try avec une visée, maybe. Donc, we
That's
have
not bad. That's a good idea.
Or maybe avec pour une visée, so something with a goal, but long-term goal, a goal which is bigger than us. Yes. So we can say avec une visée de.
Fatima, that was fun. Over to you now, Ruba, in Arabic.
تحفيز مواهب الناس وأفكارهم وأفعالهم بهدف وزخم للوصول إلى الأهداف وتحقيق رؤية مشتركة. So the two words that I feel are key in this definition is تحفيز, catalyzing, because it's a word that isn't, heavily used in Arabic in general, but I feel like here it gives the breadth and depth we need. And the other word, which I hesitated a little bit on the translation, which is momentum, because it translates into Arabic as zakham, which is a very formal and strong word. So I thought maybe we should use another word that would be more amicable or more flowy in the sentence, but actually, eventually we stayed on zakham because it does indeed capture the nuance we are trying to say, which is, momentum is also having the wisdom to know, the pace, the strength, the how, and the method in which we want to reach these goals and realize the shared vision. And this is very much depending on the personality of the leader. So eventually we just kept that word.
Ruba, thank you very, very much for our definition in Arabic. Now we move on to Uma in Bengali. Sit back and enjoy, Uma.
নেতৃত্বের পরিভাষা মানুষের প্রতিভা, চিন্তাধারা আর ক্রিয়াকে সক্রিয় সচল করে স্পষ্ট উদ্দেশ্য আর পর্যাপ্ত গতিবেগে লক্ষ্যে পৌঁছানো এবং একটি যৌথ অবিচ্ছিন্ন দর্শন অনুপ্রাণিত বা অর্জন করা, এটাকেই নেতৃত্ব বলে। The word catalyzing was a little difficult to translate, as is. In Bangla, the phrase actually, there is a blending of flavors in the word catalyzing. A blending of flavors to organize, to mobilize, to activate, to prepare. All of these come into that, the pot that cooks the word catalyze. So that was a little, so I had to look up one word which had all of this, and it had all of this, and there's not a single word for catalyze. So I mixed all of this and then came up with the word.
Did you make up a word, or have you found one?
No. I found one. The other word that was very, very unique was momentum. Now, momentum has one element which is pace or speed, pace. And the other element of momentum is, another unique element is the spiritedness in that movement. So there are two words actually in Bangla which I was struggling with. Should I emphasize pace and speed, or should I emphasize the energy and spiritedness of when something is in motion? I mean, there was no one word that I could mix. But I struggled between Goti and Tej. Goti is pace and Tej is the energy in pace. I don't know how to keep both of them. I've used Goti, but That's something I'm not very happy with it. Let's see.
And maybe it needs both words.
Maybe it needs both words. As much as this is my native language, I think, and I usually think and feel in English. I don't use my native language to, think. So it was a little tough for me.
Would you use your native language for?
To connect with my elders. To connect with my elders and to connect with communities, rural communities that I work with. So when I am talking about emotional metaphors or emotional experiences is a lot of the native language that I use, especially when there is metaphors or some kind of storytelling, then I use Bengali a lot.
Do you resent the fact that English is your thinking language, or has to be your thinking language?
No, I don't resent it. There are at times I feel a little disappointed that the language that my native language is not something that I have been able to weave into other aspects of my life, living and doing and being and becoming. However, I am not resentful about the English language because this language is also, it has layers of certain kinds of richness and connective, the English language helps me to connect to millions others. So I owe so much of the feeling of peerage, friendship, wisdom to the English language. There is no doubt about that. How much I have gained and learned from English language. Having said that, like I said, if there was more spaces of the two languages being able to flow into each other and be able to use it together, weave it together, it would have been ideal. But yeah, this was one such opportunity, so I loved it.
Uma, thank you as ever for putting your heart and soul into this. You are the 11th translation. This crazy idea has been a glorious idea, and it came very much from both Hinemoa and Annaluz. So I went back to Annaluz and asked her to just remind us about the thought that germed this concept.
I'm really pleased that we have so many languages in the expedition. I look forward to learning from the others. I think at the core, what language allows is connection and collective action. If we can't connect, we can't act together. I also think language, connects us not just to others, but also to our ancestors in many ways. And I think the important thing about language is that it carries, though, different meanings for different folks. And it can carry a heavy baggage. Language has been used to connect, but also to oppress, because it allows me to dominate, perhaps culturally. If I use language in a certain way, in English and other languages, and Spanish have been used in this way to suppress other cultures and ways of thinking. And for that reason, I think that language brings connection and it's a gift for us to communicate, but also has to be wielded with awareness, is what I would say. We need to be mindful that what we say in English may be perceived differently by others.
Different meanings for different folks. I feel the same way. Just a thought. Before we finish this episode, you've got to come back to Erica. Come back with me, because last night she sent me a message and said that she'd cracked it. So let's go back to Erica in Mandarin. She's cracked it.
Okay, so the first one is 以志起. So in Chinese way, it's called start with a purpose. 以志气, okay. And then the second 3 characters, 引志行, so meaning cultivating talent, intelligence, and action, something like that. And the last word is 成大道. 成 means achieve. 大道, I think there's more to that, but in a simple way, achieve big vision. That is amazing. How did you do it though? Yeah, I think if you, I really love to have these quotes in a way that we could put in the social media. We'll see how many loves people will get, because if they know the old Chinese like literature, etc., they will really appreciate this, because it's simple, but it's classic. It's also very, very, very beautiful.
I am very, very honored that you did this, Erica. Thank you so, 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 so much.
I'm really proud and also very honored, and also really have a good sense of achievement.
Say it again once, but all as one.
以志起, 引志行, 成大道.
Oh, how I wish you could see Erica's face. It looks so beautiful as she reads the definition that I don't begin to understand, but I love already. And actually, you know, I think the last word has to go to Selvie. One last moment. Do you remember? Uma said that this had been exhilarating and anxiety-making, and she added loving. And I think Selvie also came back to me yesterday and added to that list revealing, because in doing this translation and in struggling through this task, Selvie rediscovered something. I leave you with her till the next podcast next week.
Wow, their bahasa sounds so beautiful. Like the string of the words are just so, it was like, you know, when you listen to music, it was like so nice. And I was listening to it and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. And then as I watched 2 videos in which there's an English and there's a bahasa, I like myself a lot more in my native language. And so in bahasa, I don't feel as nervous in bahasa, you know what I mean, as compared to English.
To become part of our movement and share your thinking with us, subscribe to the podcast and join the Women Emerging group on our website at womenemerging.org. We love all of the messages you send us. Keep them coming.